Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat.
And welcome to Alpha and Omega Ministries. We are truly delighted that you have joined us, and we can see our Torah portion this week functioning all over the world. So let's dive right in and see why this Torah portion is so important. And I was just amazed to see that it points directly to the Lord's return. And you'll see that as it unfolds. So today's Torah portion is called Mishpatim, and Mishpatim has more than one meaning, which we're going to look at in a minute. But before that, we should know that there are three categories of law or instructions. So first of all, there are the Mishpatim, which we're going to look at today. And the Mishpatim are how to treat each other. These are God's instructions on how we treat each other. And then there are the Kuchot. Now these are not as easy because these are laws with no explanation. God just says, do these. Remember your mom, how she would tell you to do something and you'd say, but why? And she'd say, because I said so, right? That's what Chuchot are. Because God said so, that's why we do them. And then there's the mitzvot, which are laws with explanations, like wear tzitzit, and he tells us why we wear tzitzit, or some other instructions similar to that. So this Torah portion, there are 53 of the 613 laws. Now, we're not going to go through all 53 today, but the ones we are going to go through pertain mostly to the Mishpatim, entirely, in fact. So we're going to look at some of them, and we're going to see how specifically the laws for slaves or servants apply to us, and how that is so. So now, what's the meaning of Mishpatim? First, let me say, if you're reading in an English Bible and you come across words like, ordinances or judgments or rulings, those all mean Mishpatim. Okay, it's important to know that because probably you're reading an English Bible. So, Mishpatim, like I said, has more than one meaning. It can mean righteous. It definitely means righteous. That's one of the meanings. And another meaning is judge. And this applies to judges of all kinds, and it especially applies to the great judge, right, who we will all stand before, and that is the Shofet, or the judge of the earth. So this is amazing because when our judges do not act in righteousness and in love toward other people, if we're not judging or doing what the Lord wants us to do because of righteousness, judgment is coming. But I want you to really hear that if the judges are not judging righteously, big trouble, big trouble. Matthew 25:40, this is a Torah concept, this whole thing about judges not judging righteously. It's a Torah concept that Yeshua taught. In Matthew 25:40, he says, and the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. So think about it. Think about all these laws from that perspective. So if we're not treating each other well, it really matters, and God takes note. So how we treat our neighbor or our husband or our wife really does matter. It's in a way, and exactly however we treat other people is the way we're treating Yeshua himself. That's a big deal. So Matthew 25, 31 through 46 really gets into this concept. So let's go through this together. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. So this is the very end, right? We are seeing Yeshua come. Then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on the right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom," listen to this, "prepared for you before the foundation of the earth." That's when he prepared the kingdom for us, if we're sheep. So before the foundation of the world. Now, here's the question. How do you know if you're a sheep or a goat? And here's the answer. "For I," and this is Yeshua speaking, "was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." So what's he saying? Whatever we've done throughout our lives to other people for good is as though we're doing it to him. And the opposite is also true. So 1 John 3:17, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him?" That's a big question. If we say we love the Lord and we can overlook people that are hurting and dismiss it, well, do we really love the Lord? Right? Because he sees the people that are hurting, and it's as though he's hurting for them and waiting for us to come and help. 1 John 4:8. "Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love." So we want to stand before the judge of the earth, having done good for one another. And it's easy to do this when we see that our actions are as though we're treating Yeshua with the actions with which we treat each other. Mishpatim also means sentence, not like a sentence on a page, but like a sentence that the judge gives when he pronounces a sentence. And this concept comes out in Torah with the words Bayit ha-mishpat. And so the last three letters of mishpat, ha-mishpat, the judgment, or the court, this means Bayit ha-mishpat means court of the Lord. So there's a court up in heaven, and God is the judge of that court. So you see the last three letters here, Shaphat, are the same. Shofet, it's the judge. And so this is the court of the Lord, referring to the great judge who watches everything and knows exactly what's happening. So it is in this court that God himself will pronounce verdicts on whether each of us did the mishpatim. And he will judge the judges here. This is really important. Now, Psalm 82 describes what this is going to look like. Psalm 82. God stands up to open heaven's court. Picture that. Ooh. He pronounces judgment on who? The judges. This is big. All right, notice the judges are the ones being judged now. How long will you judges refuse to listen to the evidence? How long will you shower special favors on who? The wicked. He sees what's going on. And the wars that are taking place all over the world are ultimately about unfair judgment. Okay? Just prior to October 7th, Israel was in a time of meltdown because their judicial system was in chaos. And because the judges weren't pronouncing right judgments, the people of Israel began to turn on each other, and baseless hatred was what was going between them. So were they being kind to one another? No. They were calling each other terrible names and just doing unseemly things. They were turning against each other. And look what's going on in the courts of the United States right now. As we speak, they're being used to win political battles. They're being used to hurt people. They aren't being used for righteousness. And so the courts are supposed to bring justice, not lawfare, which is what they're doing now. God sees this, and he's going to judge the judges. And the Psalm 82 goes on. Give fair judgment to the poor man, the afflicted, the fatherless, and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the helpless from the grasp of evil men. But you are so foolish and so ignorant because you're in darkness. Listen to the result of them being in darkness. All the foundations of society are shaken to the core. That is huge. So societies that have judges that are judging for all the wrong reasons are not going to stand for long. I have called you all gods and sons of the Most High, but in death you are all mere men. You will fall as any prince, for all must die. Stand up, O God, and judge the earth, for all of it belongs to you. All nations are in your hands. Now, it's not just the United States that's going through this time where courts and judges are used for lawfare, but Vice President Vance told the Europeans in a speech that he gave to them last week that they had to stop judging Christians harshly and unfairly and putting them in prison for praying across the street from an abortion center. They were praying silently. They were not having interaction with anybody. And I believe it was in Germany, the courts put them in prison for praying silently across the street from an abortion clinic. They're in prison now. This is so sick, and the Lord sees it. So there is warfare all over the globe. And here is a quote from a news article about Vice President Vance's speech, and it's PowerPoint 1. Oh, that's awful teeny. It tricks you. Okay, I'll read it out loud. According to him, the real threat to Europe, this was Vice President Vance, was not Russia and not China, but the danger from within. The entrenched political elites who he argued and had manipulated the system to stay in power. That's exactly what's going on here. He painted a picture of a Europe that had forgotten its foundational values and was more concerned with protecting the interests of the powerful few rather than listening to the concerns of ordinary citizens. That is Psalm 82 in real time. That's exactly what is happening right now. Judges and those in power are ruling against the good of the common people. So this is important. Western cultures differentiate between church and state. We hear that all the time. Oh, church and state have to be separate. That's a terrible idea. Torah has no such distinction, none. In Torah, the courtroom and the synagogue are supposed to be one. Therefore, the Sanhedrin convenes in a building built right into the temple complex. Both the temple and the Sanhedrin, which is the court where legal decisions are made, are expressions of holiness in God's kingdom. So the law is holy. Do you see that tie-in? And the sages say, a judge who judges correctly is considered a partner in creation. That's huge. And one who rules incorrectly is a destroyer of God's world. Huge. The Lord rises up when men are tearing the world down. He's not going to stand for it. So, a quote from one of America's top talk show hosts said in PowerPoint 2, and I rearranged the words to protect him, but the political interests are causing a constitutional crisis, he said. The truth behind who? The activist judges who are continuing the lawfare efforts are being used. So they're in consortium with each other. They're in cohorts, or what's the word I'm looking for? Collusion. That's it. I knew it started with a C. All right. So they're all in collusion. These people that are high up that we don't even know their names, right? They're colluding with these judges, and it's not going to end well because they're destroying God's word. The times that we're living in couldn't possibly be more critical. The rulings of the courts affect everybody. Psalm 96, 12 and 13. Let the fields exult and let all that is in them. Then all the trees of the forest will sing for joy. Let all creation rejoice before the Lord, for he comes. He comes to what? Judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in faithfulness. And this is what we long for, don't we? Don't you want to see him come and rule and reign and judge in righteousness? Even the fields and the trees are going to be clapping their hands. It's going to be so incredibly amazing. So Revelation 19 says, then I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, and its rider was called Faithful and True. And with what? Righteousness he judges and wages war. So we see Mishpatim means righteousness. He wants his people treated with dignity and respect. Even the slaves, all right? So I'm saying, people, get ready. Yeshua is coming. He is a God of love, and he is a God of judgment. So we have to look at the whole picture when we look at the Lord. Remember, a war began in Genesis 3, 14 and 15. And it says, so the Lord God said to the serpent, and we know the serpent can be called dragon later, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and every beast of the field. On your belly will you go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He's going to crush your head, and you will strike his heel. So what happened here? War was declared. And we're now involved in this war at the other end of the book. Okay? And you say, how am I involved in this war? Well, Revelation 12:17 gives us a hint. And it says, and the dragon, who was the serpent in the garden, was enraged at the woman. And now, because of the unfolding revelation, we know the woman is Israel, and went to make war with the rest of her children who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. So the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Who are the ones who keep the commandments and have the testimony of Yeshua? We are. We're the only ones. We're her other children. So Satan wants to judge us and make us at war against each other. He's a master manipulator at doing this, okay? So we're in this war now, and this verse said, who hold the testimony. What is a testimony? Everybody thinks it's what you say to somebody else, telling about what the Lord has done in your life, right? But a testimony is evidence, and it's also reputation. And here's how a testimony really works. It's evidence that we did what Yeshua did. That's a testimony. It's a reputation of being like Yeshua. So when people look at us, they ought to go, oh my gosh, I've heard about this Jesus person. You act like him. So we think of a testimony as telling what the Lord has done, and that's great. But in actuality, it's also how we have become like him. That's our testimony. In what ways have I become like Yeshua? How we act out good as he did. How are we doing that? How we obey the Father in heaven as he did. That's our testimony, because that makes our lives a testimony. We're that living letter. Romans 12:2, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. This is our testimony. This is how we fight the war, right? Evil wants to overcome us. No, we're going to fight back with good. We're partners with the Lord in creating the world for good. It's a whole different way to look at things. Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua for what? That's why we're created, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Titus 2:14, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession who are what? Zealous for good works. Are you getting the picture here? We're here to do good because that's what the Lord did. So Mishpatim means that we live in righteousness and we do good to people. James 1:22. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. So nobody wants to be deceived, but we will not live in deception if Yeshua is our role model and we go around doing what he did. And now we pick up and do everything that we saw him doing. Matthew 4:23. Yeshua went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Healing should be normal in our congregations. It should just be normal. And this is why the Mishpatim, how we treat each other, matters. James 5:9. Do not complain, brethren, against one another, so that you yourselves, what? May not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing right at the door. We're not getting away with anything. He sees it all, right? Okay. 2 Timothy 4:8, in the future there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. How important is it to long for him to come? It's hugely important. If we're not longing for him to appear, then what are we longing for? Everybody's longing for something. What are you longing for if you're not longing for him to appear? That's a question we all have to answer. Luke 2, 15 through, it must be 16. Then, as some spoke of the temple, how it was adorned and beautiful stones and donations, he said, these things which you see, the days will come in which not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. So here's my question. Did those people really believe that that temple was going to be thrown down? I doubt it. And that temple was destroyed exactly as he said. So here's the next question. Do we really believe that the final judgment is about to come upon us? It could at any time. I don't think people believe it. I think they think that we have a long time to go. I don't think so. And you'll see why at the end of this Torah portion. We see how near his coming is just by watching the judges and the rulers in this world judge his people unjustly. So is his coming close? Oh, yes. People get ready. The king is coming. Exodus 21, 1 and 2. These are the rulings, or the Mishpatim, you are to present to them. If you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to work 6 years, but in the 7th, he is to be given his freedom without having to pay anything. So how did a Jewish person become a slave, specifically a man? If a Jewish man was caught stealing anything that he couldn't afford to pay for later, then he was sold into slavery so that he could afford to pay back what he had stolen and then work for that master for up to 6 full years, but not past that. At the end of the 6th year, he was let go free. The second reason he could be taken into slavery is if he is economically overwhelmed. He has too much credit card debt, his house payments are too high, he's lost his job, he's just over his head, he's dying in debt. And so he can sell himself as a slave in that condition. When he does, he gets a lump sum of money from the master and the support of his wife and children for his service. But in both cases, the slave-master relationship is to restore the slave back into society whole. That's the whole purpose for slavery in the Bible. Okay? And there's more amazing things. And here the compassion begins to unfold. Even the slaves had rights. And at the end of the 6th year, they were to be released. Exodus 21, 3 through 6. If he, the slave, came single, he is to leave single. If he was married when he came, his wife is to go with him when he leaves. But if his master gave him a wife and she bore him sons or daughters, then the wife and her children will belong to her master, and he will leave by himself. That's a strange concept to us, right? Nevertheless, if the slave declares, I love my master, my wife, and my children, so I don't want to go free, then his master is to bring him before God, and there at the door or doorpost, his master is to pierce his ear with an awl, and the man will be his slave for life. So why was the ear pierced? Why the ear? Why not the finger or the hand or the foot or something else? Why the ear? Exactly. The sages asked that question. Why was the ear chosen for piercing rather than another organ? Since it was the ear that heard on Mount Sinai, you shall not steal. But did he pay attention to what the ear heard? No. He went ahead and stole. Let his ear be pierced, since it was the ear that had heard the commandment. So then it says, for unto me the children of Israel let's see, for unto me are the children of Israel servants. Whose slaves are the children of Israel? God's, nobody else's. They are my servants, God says. So yet the ear threw off the heavenly yoke. Why? The ear heard everything God said that day, and they didn't care. They just threw it off. That's the heavenly yoke. So they didn't bother with what they'd heard, and they replaced it with the yoke of man. How many of us do the same things? So let the ear be pierced, because that's what threw God's word away and said, I'm going to do it my way. We are servants of God alone, and that's the mindset that we're supposed to have. True freedom really exists only when we serve God. And here is something that is amazing. A slave received whatever his master had. So if a slave was purchased by a very wealthy man and he drank only the best wine, then the slave also drank only the best wine. If that master was so wealthy that all he wore was Gucci clothing, then the slave also was provided Gucci clothing. If that master was so wealthy that he ate only the best food, whatever the slave served the master, he ate. So he ate only the best food. Now that's if the master was very wealthy. And what did our master have while he was on earth? Remember, he came to serve his Father, but listen to what he had. Luke 4:24. Then he added, truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. Yeshua was rejected by the people he came to serve. That's what he was to do. Luke 9:58. And Yeshua said to him, the foxes have holes and the birds of the air nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere he might lay his head. He didn't have a home. He didn't even have a home. 2 Corinthians 8:9. For you know the grace of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, that he, though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you through his poverty might become rich. Because we're going to inherit the kingdom that he made for us before the foundation of the earth. Imagine the wealth that's in it. We're going to receive everything our master has. It's amazing. So our master gave all his wealth to serve us. That is Mishpatim, to the greatest extent. And we give our lives as he did. When we do, we will be rich for eternity with riches we can't fathom. Revelation 22:12 says, look, I'm coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give each person according to what they have what? Done. This is a religion of doing. It's not sit down and read and pray only. It's get out there and do something, right? So it's so important. Why does he tell us this? Why does he sometimes seem almost harsh? It's because he doesn't want us to be caught up short. When he comes, he wants to bless us, not judge us, right? So we go on with the parable of the talents. And I want you to look at this parable in a way you never have. This is Mishpatim in action. It's about a master and a servant and how it works in his kingdom. Matthew 25:14-30. For it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants, that would be us, and entrusted to them his property. So he's given us the entire world, right? To one, he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. He's not going to ask us to do something that we can't possibly do. He's going to give us our talents according, the money according to what we can actually do, okay? So then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. So his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Okay? Well, that's the joy we want to get into. Will you enjoy the same joy he has? Yes, we will, because he's our master. And the servant gets whatever the master has when he comes to judge. So, and he also, and he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. What's the first problem here? We're not given a spirit of fear. Absolutely not. We go and we make more. So here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, listen to these words. You wicked and slothful servant. Oh, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming, I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. He is serious, okay? Why was this servant worthless? He hadn't produced for the kingdom. And he didn't give him a job that he couldn't have done. He just decided he wouldn't do it. He'd just dig it in the ground and put it away. So this shows the master-servant relationships, and it shows the consequences of not obeying. The master desperately wants to do good to his servants because he owns the whole world. He can do good. But he wants them also to know how important it is to do what he says. That's the key. I'll tell you a little story. My parents were not wealthy people, but one day they came to my brother and I, and they said, we've saved up enough money and we're taking you two to Disneyland, and then whatever the day was, right? So obviously, I mean, Disneyland was amazing to us. I mean, I really felt like I was a princess when I walked in there. It was just a magical kingdom. And I couldn't wait to go. But my brother and I one day decided to go further away from home than we were supposed to go. And it was so far away that both of our parents were calling. Now, when my mom called, it was bad enough. When my dad called, you could worry for your life, okay? So we didn't hear them calling. We didn't know they were calling, but we saw the sun going down, and when the street lights came on, we knew we had to be home. So we ran the whole way home, through the orange groves, through everything, and we got home, and we thought everything was fine because the street lights had just come on. Well, we were greeted with a little bit of news that said, the trip's off. We will not be going to Disneyland. You went further than you were supposed to go, and we've been calling you, and we did not know where you were. We're not going to Disneyland. They didn't need to say any more. Well, we both got spankings too, but it sufficed just to say that we weren't going to Disneyland, right? I mean, they had all this blessing to give us, but we blew it. We blew it. God is a good, good Father. He wants to do good. So the nation of Israel, I'm sorry, I skipped some. So we see this concept of what's written and what's expected and what happens when people don't do what they're told. It's incredible. So in our half Torah portion, we find Jeremiah the prophet saying to King Zedekiah, who had been king while Nebuchadnezzar's armies were invading the land, and they had withheld food for more than a year from the people of Israel. The city was on the verge of destruction. The people were being carried away. But people never think that there are really going to be consequences. Just like my brother and I, we didn't think about it. We didn't even think about it. We thought about it after that. So the nation of Israel is on the verge of being destroyed and losing its liberty. And what became the overriding issue of that day? Was it the lack of food? No, it was the freeing of slaves. You know why? They hadn't freed the slaves for years. They'd totally ignored the 6-year service and then you're set free in the 7th year. No, they hadn't bothered to even think about it. So Jeremiah prophesied to King Zedekiah. Jeremiah 34, 8 through 10 says, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people in Jerusalem to proclaim freedom for the slaves. Everyone was to free their Hebrew slaves, both male and female. No one was to hold a fellow Hebrew in bondage. So all the officials and people who entered into this covenant agreed that they would free their male and female slaves and no longer hold them in bondage. They agreed and they set them free. And then King Zedekiah says, well, I'm really going to make this official. Now I'm going to cut a calf in half. I'm going to walk through the pieces just like Abraham did. And I'm going to believe that the Lord has forgiven everything because I have made a covenant like Abraham did. But then Jeremiah tells us what happened next. Jeremiah 38:11. But afterward, they changed their minds and made the male and female slaves return, whom they had set free, and brought them into subjection as male and female slaves. So they set them free, they did the whole covenant thing, and then they brought them back. Jeremiah 34:14. At the end of 7 years, every one of you is to set free his Hebrew brother who has been sold to you and has served you how many years? 6 years. You are to let him go free from you. But your ancestors did not listen to me or pay any attention. So will there be consequences? Oh, yes. Jeremiah 34:17. Therefore, here is what Adonai says. You did not heed me and proclaim freedom, each to his brother and each to his neighbor. So now I proclaim for you a freedom, says Adonai, for sword, plague and famine. I will make you an object of horror to all the kingdoms on the earth. He means what he says. And doesn't this sound exactly like what Yeshua said to the servant who was thrown into outer darkness where there would be gnashing of teeth? That's a horror, right? So it's the same thing in a different book of the Bible. Then, Jeremiah 34:20, I'm going to hand them over to their enemies, hand them over to those who seek their lives, and their corpses will become food for birds in the air and wild animals. And that's exactly what it says in Revelation when Yeshua is bringing judgment to a sinful world and freeing us. Now listen, look at the context, Revelation 19, 17, and 18. And I saw one angel standing in the sun, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying to all the birds flying in mid-heaven, come, be gathered together for the great banquet of God, in order that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of powerful ones, and the flesh of horses, and of one sitting on them, and the flesh of everyone, both free and slaves, both small and great. So there's this cycle of obedience and consequence, and we see it from Genesis through Revelation. Revelation is a time when evil is being judged. The people of God who have served him are being set free. It's happening at the 6th day of history. At the end of the 6th day, the slaves go free. That's us. All right? Revelation is happening during the 6th millennium, which is equal to the 6th day of history. And this is what Peter is talking about in 2 Peter 3:8. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. So the Master is coming, and we are not to be released until the 6th day. We're at the end of the 6th day now. So what are we to do as these days of judgment approach? Well, here's what we're to do. I see your solemn looks on your faces, but we're going to obey the Lord. That's not a big deal. And in the obedience, we are supposed to have great zeal, all right? And joy in looking forward to our ultimate freedom. Can you sense it coming? It's really amazing because our judge, the great king, is coming, and we're to be burning with excitement to see him. So here's what it looks like in Hebrew. This is Lahava, and that's the flame of God. When he comes to judge, he's coming in a flame, okay? And then there is Lahav, which is the sword of Messiah, which is also going to be flaming. So combine these two flames of God and of Messiah, and now heat lahavut is what we are to do. This is our spiritual excitement. We're supposed to be so excited that we're like a flame. People are always attracted to a fire. If you have the fireplace on and you have company come over, you want to come in and sit by the fire, right? It's always what you want to do. You want to watch that fire. It's mesmerizing somehow. It's warm. It's beautiful. It's never the same. People are attracted to fire. Our spiritual excitement at the return of our Lord will draw people to us. They're going to want to know, why aren't you worried? Why aren't you troubled? Why aren't you going crazy like the rest of the world? Because we have heat lahavut. We're excited. We can hardly wait. Our Master is about to return and set us free and give us the reward of the creation that he made for us before the foundation of the world. Think about it. It sets you on fire. So, pardon? Yes, get up and dance. All right, so Romans 12:11 tells us this exact thing. It says, do not lag in zeal. You know what zeal is, the word for it? Hitlahavut. That's the very word. Don't lag in this. Be fervent in spirit. Keep serving the Lord. No matter how weird and tough and crazy times get, we don't care. The worse they get, the closer he is, right? So, in Greek, zeal is the word zeos, and it means to boil with heat. That's what that verse is saying. Do not lag in boiling with heat. Don't lag in that zeal, but let it burn. This is the beauty of it. When you're so excited about the Lord's return that you just have this fire glowing from you, your sins are being burnt off. They're literally being burnt off of you because you don't have time for them. You just want to do good. You want to see people be as happy as you are and burn with this zeal. So it's also called, it's so hard to do Hebrew upside down. Blibat. Upside down and backwards. It messes with your brain. All right. Blibat Mashiach ben David. When we blaze with this fire, Mashiach ben David is going to come. Blibat is this blazing fire. It's 434. The exact same gematria as Mashiach ben David. That's who Yeshua is coming back as. Not as a humble servant. He's coming back king, judge. He's burning with fire. It's going to be powerful. And don't we love that? All right. He is coming to defeat Satan. He's going to end the war that started in Genesis 3. Yes. That's why we're in the battle now. We're in the very end of the end of the end of the battles. And he's called us to fight with him, to join our spiritual excitement with his fire. And we will see results from that. So may we be found loving each other and doing good to people, blazing with excitement, because we want to hear these words, Matthew 24:34. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the earth. And that is Torah Portion Mishpatim. Woohoo! Yeah. Oops. Cords everywhere.